welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today, we're going to talk about Marie, Countess of Champagne. Marie was born in the year of our Lord, 1145. Her parents were 25-year-old King Louis VII of France and his 21-year-old queen consort Eleanor of Aquitaine. Check out her epic episode. It's 5 parts. Her birth was a bit of a disappointment. Her parents had been married for 8 years at this point, and Marie was their first pregnancy, likely because her father suffered from so much religious guilt about sex, even sex within the confines of marriage. When Marie was still just a toddler, her parents both left to go on the Second Crusade. Marie was left behind in France at a royal nursery. They were gone for a couple of years, and when they were returning, it was a low point in their marriage. They took separate ships home, and when they stopped by the Pope's place to ask for an annulment, the Pope let them borrow a bed. And he said, "Here, use this bed, draped in my draperies here, and conceive your next child. It will be a boy." They did conceive a child in the Pope's magic bed, but not the right kind, because in 1150, Marie, at the age of 5, gained herself a new baby sister named Alex. And that was the final nail in the coffin of her parents' marriage. 2 girls in a row, and you throw the whole union out. 2 strikes and you're out in this case. It took a couple of years, but the French monarchs did finally get the Pope to agree to their annulment. Marie and Alex were allowed to stay legitimate because their parents had married in good faith, and custody was awarded to their father, the King of France. Once her parents' marriage had been annulled, Marie's mother was heading back to her lands in Aquitaine, leaving her daughters, 7-year-old Marie and 2-year-old Alex, back with their father in Paris. 7-year-old Marie wouldn't have known this, but this was a dangerous journey for her mother. She would almost be kidnapped twice on her way home in an attempt to force her into marriage. One of these attempted kidnappers was Thibault V, Count of Blois, and that will be relevant later. Marie's mother married as soon as possible. She married a young count and soon-to-be King of England. Marie's mother was the only woman in history to be the Queen of France and the Queen of England. And again, all of that was covered in Eleanor of Aquitaine's episode. The very next year, Marie's mother had her 3rd baby, the first with this king, and it was a boy. Queen Eleanor had provided England what she had not provided for France, a male heir. That same year that 8-year-old Marie's mother had her first son, big things were happening in France too. Marie was betrothed to 26-year-old Henri of Champagne. Not only was he 26 to her 8, he was also the older brother of the man who tried to kidnap and forcibly marry her mother the previous years. That's awkward. The way a kidnapper could force a lady into marriage was to kidnap and rape them, and then they'd have to get married for their honor. So, gross. It makes you wonder how close Marie's father was with the family that attempted to kidnap his ex. But also, they had beef in the past. It was a whole church-burning thing. So maybe King Louis was trying to make peace. He had accidentally burned 1,300 people alive, and then Thibault had almost kidnapped and raped his ex-wife. How about we give peace a chance and set up 8-year-old Marie with 26-year-old Henri? The next year, Marie was sent to live with Countess Elizabeth to further her noble education. As she was growing up, her mother had a handful of children, and her father got remarried to Constance of Castile and had his 3rd daughter, another disappointment. In 1159, when Marie was about 14, her marriage was happening to 32-year-old Henri, Count of Champagne. So, ew. Maybe it was a shot for peace. Maybe it was paying back of old debts. But Henri was an old friend of her father's. They had gone to crusade together after their little war church-burning issues. But they wouldn't have their first child for another 7 years, so I'm happy about that. 1 year into Marie's marriage, her stepmother, Constance, was pregnant again. And again, she had a girl. But this time, Constance died doing it. We covered all that in Constance of Castile's episode. In 1160, Marie's half-brother from her mother and her half-sister from her father were betrothed, hopefully to create an Anglo-Franco alliance. The king needed a male heir as soon as possible, so he remarried just 5 weeks after the death of his second wife. This likely would have been scary for 15-year-old Marie. She would be expected to have children soon, and her stepmother had died doing just that very same thing. The king's new wife, Marie's new stepmother, was 20-year-old Adela of Champagne, the sister of Marie's husband. So her sister-in-law was becoming her stepmother. But then Marie's mother had another baby, and it turned out well despite being another girl. So it wasn't always a death sentence. In 1164, Maria's younger sister Alex was 14, and now it was her turn to get married. Who was she marrying? Thibault V, Count of Blois. Remember him? The guy that attempted to kidnap her mother all those years ago? Charmed, I'm sure. So Marie's sister was also now her sister-in-law, and their other sister-in-law was married to their dad. Everyone's related. Marie's father finally had that boy he'd been waiting so long for, and her mother had another little prince, Prince John, the future King John the First and Last of Magna Carta infamy. That same year her mother had her last baby. Marie was also having her first baby that they named Henri. In the 1170s were filled with more babies for Marie, lots of babies. She also spent a lot more time with her mother. Together they presided over a love court. It was a court that delved into matters of love. One of their rulings was that it was unlikely for people who were married to be in love. So, good times. In 1172, her half-brother from her mother married her half-sister from her father. Where do you sit when you are the half-sister of both the bride and the groom? Awkward. But then things got even more awkward. Marie's brothers, with the support of their mother, rebelled against their father. They lost, and her mother was imprisoned by her second husband, the King of England, Marie's stepfather. By 1179, Marie had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and her husband was leaving on crusade. They were in between the second and third crusades at this point, but there were always crusade battles going on, here and there, little skirmishes. Marie was made regent for her husband while he was away on crusade. She was his person, the person he most trusted. Her husband was away for 2 years because crusading wasn't fast, and just after he returned, he then died. She stuck around home until 1187, when at the age of 42, she retired to England. During this time, Marie's stepfather had died. This meant that her mother was being released from her castle arrest. The king is dead, long live the king. Now Marie's younger half-brother was the new king of England, King Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, for 3 years, because then it was her son's turn to go on crusade. Marie had to come out of retirement to act as regent for her son, just as she had for her husband just before he died. She was regent for her son off and on for the next 7 years, until he too died. And Marie died the year after her son, in 1198 at the age of 53. And that is where I'll leave it for now. What did you think of Marie, Countess of Champagne? I think she did the best she could in a situation she didn't get to choose any part of. I want to give a shout out to one of my patrons, Tracy, my very first patron, and thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are the best. Long live to all the queens out there, and until next time, bye.
You'll be remembered.
Thanks for listening.